Okay.
Here we are. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, it's an exciting day today because we're actually in the same room,
Right?
which is, rare
Some
when you think.
efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at all the bandwidth we save.
Right, exactly.
Right? Um, and
I heard an interesting thing, and it brings up the concept of a nature of critique. I'm a big climate change guy. I don't know how I weave it into almost everything I say, but when somebody's talking about climate change, and they were imagining a new future, right, where we're, I guess, more connected, more on computers, maybe less like menial kind of job sort of scenario. What is this criticism that I hear about using electricity in super centers and the incredible gluttonous amount of electricity that's drawn down on our electrical grids because we're doing something similar to this, right? Like,
well, I think that,
does that resonate with you guys at all, right? In like a post-carbon world?
I think, that just demonstrates is that there's no easy answer, right? So, if you're, let's say, anti-oil or anti-pipeline, that's great, but there's always more to it, right? Or if you're, pro this type of power or that type of power or whatever, like it's never as simple as what's directly in front of your face.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's not necessarily this. I think it's like in my house, I have so many things plugged in and unnecessarily running in the background that I could probably address, right? That pulls power from the grid that probably doesn't need to, but it's convenient to leave it plugged in.
Convenience is a great motivator.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, like, do we say that we're switching from one evil to another? I don't know. There's still lots of room for improvement in the little things in between, I think.
Yeah. Well, Adam, you do. Well, actually, you guys are both engineers, right? That's the idea, right? So, I mean, there's a foundation of you guys thinking empirically for pretty much most of what you do, right? I mean, it buttresses your understanding of the world. Would that be correct?
Yeah, for sure. I would say.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, I was just going to say you can take subjective things like. I don't know, human behavior and interaction, and you can try and build frameworks around it or do some analysis on it or speak intelligently on it. I feel as though our engineering background has helped us at the very least with the language to be able to describe such things in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
Says me.
Well, I mean, this episode is all about science fiction, so we'll merge the two worlds sooner than later. Anybody that wants to learn more about Adam and Kate's engineering background and how you apply it in a day-to-day environment, that's the Monday series.
That's
Today
right.
we're here to talk about science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and in particular this merger between technology, science, and the creations that we imagine. And so Kate was very inspirational in creating the following clip, and she's covering her face like but it's an interesting thing that happens here. We were playing the video back, and I know, what is this phenomenon that when we see the iteration of our own creation coming back on us, it does it to me as well, right? I mean, it somehow changes. It changes the experience knowing that we've created that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Big time. It's like a piece of yourself out there for judgment of all.
Right? And then you're the hardest critic of yourself. But like this was challenging. So for the people watching, it's like Daniel puts together a series of video clips and then we voice them over. But it's almost like reverse engineering the story he's telling himself when he puts together these video clips and then trying to create what we think the story is there. And so for me it was challenging, but here it is.
Okay, we'll play it and we'll see if we can get some feedback here from everybody.
Imagine a world where we have embraced scientific technology to bioengineer humans, growing beings with amplified traits to serve the greater needs. Would we exploit our manufactured siblings, treating them as slaves? When the lines of science and creation are blurred, will we maintain our humanity? In a world where the slightest shift could destroy civilization as we know it, do we decide to remove our self-imposed ethical limitations upon our scientific world, all in the name of our own survival? And if we go down this rabbit hole of creation, manipulating our DNA, merging biotechnology into our bodies to be stronger, faster, smarter, would we recognize the creatures we have become? For science and technology is no longer our limitation. We have the ability to create and manipulate life. But just because we can do it, the question is, should we? Our biggest limitation to bringing creatures to life is the controversy of ethics. Will this barrier be enough to set us on the right course to ensure we truly act in humanity's best interest? Or will we push past those limitations in a blind race to save ourselves from our fragile existence, telling ourselves it'll be for our own good? Could we truly create a better, stronger version of ourselves? Or will we suffer the fate of Dr. Frankenstein, doomed to a life of misery and fueled by only that to drive down and destroy our creations? A creation that was misunderstood, mistreated, and shunned from the only thing he ever sought: human connection. Can we be better than Dr. Frankenstein? Do we have the empathy strong enough to nurture what we build? Do you think we're ready for this future?
Ooh, goosebumps.
There we go.
That was pretty good. That was amazing.
It was really hard.
It is. It's really hard, and it's a technique that it's an FFA, which could mean a free for all, but it's a free form association.
Okay. I thought the F stood for something else.
Yeah.
So the idea, and we use this on the Planksip site a lot, whereas we give our writers a quote, and we urge them not to look it up, not to consult the Google Oracle. We're actually trying to get them to think just with the thoughts that are dropping in front of their consciousness, right? So despite the fact that you might have thought that I had a sequence or a narrative in mind, in fact, all I really was doing was trying to have a starting point similar to the genre of science fiction that emerges from academia, that says that the genre most likely started with Mary Shelley, right? And so when you look at the creative or think or try and inhabit this mind to feel what it's like to be Mary Shelley in that particular point in time, she was just completely wide open to a completely new world, right? We would do a little bit of study about her and some of the corresponding influences in her life at that particular period of time. But I mean, I think this is really an interesting starting point, to our journey on the creation of a science fiction story.
Yeah. I loved, all the what ifs, all these questions like, are we ready, or are we doomed, and all this. And to me, that's what great sci-fi answers, right? Or at least it poses a hypothetical, and then we can imagine that future and say, yeah, okay, that's amazing, or no, or oh shit.
Don't go down that rabbit hole.
Right?
Yeah. But it's really interesting. Like, you're right. Mary Shelley was kind of like trailblazer in her own right, starting a whole new genre, and one that is translated way past her time over and over and over again. And it's kind of like, I don't think there's a lot of business lesson sci-fi books out there, and so maybe we are blazing our own little trail here.
Maybe. Well, and sci-fi has an interesting history, right? Like even Star Trek, which is, you know, a worldwide phenomenon now. At the time, you know, like it was kind of controversial to put that on TV. If you're like, why? Like rolling their eyes at it. This is stupid, right? Yeah, here we are. Captured the imaginations, the what if, right? And I think that's what I love about sci-fi or fantasy. You can imagine yourself in this other world where maybe the stakes aren't as personal or as high, right? So, yeah, well done, Caitlin. Good job. Now the pressure's on.
I agree. That was very, very good. Yeah.
I honestly had to consult the Google Oracle though, just to like some of the references I was new to. Right.
What time in the morning did you film that at?
At 4 a.m. I voiced that over.
Effort.
That's how I got that nice, luxurious, just woke up sound that you heard throughout the.
Amazing. Wow.
Well, I have to say that in this particular case, I actually want you guys to consult the Google Oracle, and the reason is that the theme throughout this particular assignment and all the rest that follow for, I think, 12 or 16 weeks is very educational. So it will be read and try and summarize and try and understand what these references are. Wikipedia is a great source.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm not asking to become an expert on it, but I think that this will only enrich your experience with writing the pieces, right? And I would say enjoy the process. Try and come up with ideas from Wikipedia as to how they're actually structuring the book. And I know a lot of classics, what they do is that you can build scenes that are almost a pastiche, an allusion towards something else that came before in the genre, right? So, like for example, if we were to build a scene, that resembled another story, the genre would probably pick up on that if we did that correctly. And then we have this ability to have kind of a conversation critique. We're able to voice it through the storytelling mechanism, which is really interesting. And if there's something opinionated, like for example, Adam, that you feel passionate about with something that's influenced you, you can set the stage. You guys are literally the people that are orchestrating that performance. And so really try and think about how to develop that and what kind of scenes you want to create.
And I think this was kind of the idea about doing this live and inviting people to add their 2 cents in. It kind of appeals to the engineer in me, right? Because I want to create a world that at least sounds a little bit plausible, right? Because I have something serious to say. And if we can add a little bit of actual intelligent theory into it, and then, like you said, pull from Blade Runner or whatever, then let's do that, right? People have debated, the final scene in Blade Runner for ages. People probably still fight about that, right? So, but yeah, like I would love to create something that kind of nod at those types of classics, right?
Well, A Space Odyssey, for example, it has a controversial ending as well. And, from that standpoint, are you guys visualizing anything from an ending already? Like some people come up with the ideas and reverse engineer it. I mean, I'm not asking to divulge it, but, is there something, or you don't know how the novel will end?
Honestly,
what is your...
No.
Not right now.
We imagined the beginning, and I think last time we talked about that whole thing with the sunrise, and like that's kind of what we imagined. We kind of imagined a bit of the journey, but as far as an ending, No, I haven't got that far. Like I've heard interviews with writers and directors and all that where they're just like, I knew the ending from the start. It was this, right? But I don't know if I see that. I'm kind of excited to see where this goes. Maybe.
Yeah. So to stay on task, we have to somehow volley that back and forth. I think I volunteered to do some sort of an initial a sketch on the piece. So even a note form sort of concept, just send me a note, sort of bullet points, sort of highlights, and then I'll kind of try and stitch it together in a show not tell kind of scenario.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that was kind of.
So do that, and then I'll see if I can.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll share the file with you, and then you can kind of switch our mode, because we were in that telling mode, right? And so we need to kind of get into the form of like taking the reader on a journey instead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of us kind of sketching this out to begin with, let me propose something here.
Okay.
If we continue with the engineers on the tell mode, right? Then I think that's really important, because it allows you to bullet point through the progression of the novel, right?
Yeah.
And then what we can always do is go back but this provides something that it gives the thematic and the logical consistency through the novel. It gives something that's really important, because consistency and it has a logical flow, right? And so I would say, don't get lost in the floweriness of it, right? I can start by putting a few things in front of you guys in terms of showing, right, and describing. And so let's continue with the showing part of it.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can kind of structure the whole novel that way.
Okay.
I think that's great, right? Like, even if we jot some notes down and circle them, be like, need some kind of story here to illustrate this point, but this is the point that we're trying to say, right?
Exactly.
It becomes more of a collaborative kind of like, I have to imagine writing something on this scale. I've never done it, but it's not like you just sit down and start typing and you get everything, right? You kind of edit it and edit it and edit it and edit it and edit it, right? So, yeah, I'm game for that. I think that sounds awesome, and it's a learning process for us too. We're going to learn a little bit about writing, and
all of our writing's been fairly technical up to this point.
Yeah, right. So you gotta unlearn that a little bit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, but that's what I'm trying to do, is keep you guys in that mode to technically run it through with structure, and then you guys understand all the points that it's moving towards, and so you won't get in kind of a rookie move lost in a direction that you feel you have to pull back from, right?
Yeah.
And you're swimming upstream, right? And then it's hard and it loses the audience. So I don't have the vision, so I don't have the structure, but I can start to fill some of the material, right?
Well,
and then it's more intuitive to say, did you capture that?
Yeah.
And you keep telling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the very first day, what we did is we took a whole bunch of sticky notes and wrote all these ideas of what we kind of wanted to represent, and then we're like, okay, so where's the story around all of these things, and where's the epiphany, and where does this happen, and where does this character go on a journey? When does he or she transform? Right? When do they go on that? What's the obstacles? So we kind of mapped it all out. We put all these sticky notes on and then moved them around until we figured out the right sort of path. And okay, this character enters in here, and this is what they bring to the table, right? So we mapped it kind of all out like that, and then we realized that in order for us to put this into a sci-fi world, we'd have to imagine a whole world. So then we had a whole brainstorming session on what that world would look like, and even philosophized what the house would look like. And then we had to build a timeline. So we have a timeline all sticky noted out of what happens, from today to 600 years in the future, right? And it's just random thoughts that we have, by this date we won't have this anymore. By this date this has changed, and how did we evolve to get to this standpoint? So it's kind of like a whole bunch of scattered sticky notes right now.
But what I learned about this creative process is, we cleared the whole day. We're like, all right, we're just gonna do this for like 8 hours. It's great. And after 2 hours, we're exhausted. We're just like, hey, I got nothing. We kind of like learned that you only have so much to give, and then you kind of have to just give your nod to the creativity gods and say, okay, I'll do something else now.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually much more difficult than people would imagine to do that. And I think that I don't know if this is for everybody, but it kind of takes a piece of your soul every time you produce something, right? Totally. And it just at least the good stuff. It rips down to something really, really fundamental, and it's a litmus for personal growth, I think. And what's really beautiful about it is that if people appreciate that, and you give something to a community that is receptive, it's probably quite an amazing feeling. And so we've got our work cut out for us, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I hope at the end of the day, like that voiceover Caitlin did. If whatever we produce, you read it and it makes you think and makes you have a conversation, and then makes someone else think about something a little differently, and then maybe argue about it or whatever, let's put in some controversial ideas in there and see what people pull from it. Like, that's what I kind of imagine is a success, right? So
yeah. So let's think about this. I know it's more of a Moore's projection on technological advance, but if we go back 600 years from today, we're stuck really in the Middle Ages, right? So I don't know. Let's just have some fun with this. I mean, I quite often think about our ability to suffer, right? As compared to let's say a Daniel, Kate, and Adam version of us that was in 1472, right? I mean, childbirth, for example, or an operation, or a kidney stone, or it just horrific suffering and pain.
I blew my Achilles last year, and I often think about how lucky I am that I live in a time where that can be fixed. It's I'm like, Jesus, 200 years ago, I would either been hobbled for life or killed. That was it.
Like a horse.
Yeah.
Taken out to pasture.
So that sounds horrifying. So yeah, when we project into the future, and I think this is one of the difficulties about it is, when we project the future, we can't help but draw a straight line, right? Like a linear progression. But we know, even it doesn't matter how many times we're told, that it's an exponential, right? And especially now with computers and all this stuff. So even then, you can't, you can't force yourself to think exponentially. It's so hard, right?
Well, it's so funny to watch, films that project the future, where the future's actually now the past. If you look at Back to the Future #2,
yeah,
right? It's amazing how much they projected and how much actually came true and what didn't, and what kind of happened in that time. But it's this anything's possible kind of realm. But I love that kind of stuff where you say, when did they go Back to the Future? 2013? 2015? Yeah. 2015, right? And it's past, but holographic videos and 3D imagery, yeah, we're there, right? And I remember watching at the time the big shark coming out, right?
I was 14 or something.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, we did that. We were there, we made that. Shrinkable clothing didn't happen. No. But it's it's this art of the possible that is kind of really cool and allows us to just, tell us we're wrong. Everybody who's going to read the book next year won't be around to tell us if we're right or wrong.
Wait a minute. I have to comment on the shrinkable clothing thing.
Okay.
my wife found something, and she was very proud to show me the closet, right? And so I looked at it. She said, "Don't you notice anything?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm walking into something here, right? I'm in the closet, which is not my zone, really, right?" And so I'm trying to look at the closet, trying to think. I was coming up blank. Well, apparently what she bought was this like suction thing that takes my winter jackets and stuff that I'm not going to be using in the next 6 months.
The vacuum wrap.
Condenses it down. Yeah, the vacuum thing, right? It sucks it just down to like nothing. And so we got like half of our closet space back.
That's amazing.
Okay, there you go.
I mean, just weird things that, I mean, you could look at this in the 80s or something and say, yeah, we're going to have this in 2020. You'd be like, what? You just hook it up to this like bladder of like petroleum, and you're going to, right? Like,
but I think one thing
we become used to it. Like we become so that's like, oh, it's not a big thing. Novelty now is something to discover, and but then once we become accustomed to it, it's no longer it's a norm, right?
Well, and I think one of my favorite sci-fi novels, and I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it was about it's the kind of future, X 100 years in the future, space travel, and there's 8 people on a space station that's traveling, and then some kind of disaster occurs, and they have the capability and the skills and all the materials they need to save themselves, but because of the individual flaws of the people, it's about how this person doesn't like that person, so doesn't talk to them, and then that person goes and steals this from this person, and they all start acting individually and selfishly, and one by one they all die. And it sounds terribly tragic, but the novel was so powerfully done because they came this close to succeeding. All they had to do was work together, but because of their own flawed characters, they doomed themselves. And I just thought that was kind of cool exercise or thought experiment in the human condition, because it took place in space and there was some fantastical stuff, but at the end of the day it was about people just being people. And that's what I really think is what we want to try and create here, right? Is people just being people with some cool kind of imagining scenarios around it, right? That sounds kind of morose, but
do you guys feel like what comes to my mind is that you guys kind of embody that in the in the ENTA philosophy. Like, I don't know, I'm not trying to pull it back to ENTA here at all, but the idea is that you've got some chaos, you've got some entropy going on with organizations, and they could be, if they had that crystal ball, they could be so close to exceptionality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so close. It's like, what is revealing? What is that simple little recipe that could just get you right onto track?
It's a really good point, right? And look at what's going on today in the world, right? Like, are we doing pretty good? Are we doing great? Like, did we do it close to doing great? Like, and how many people are out there that just with a little push could be great, right? So,
what do they say? Good is the biggest enemy of being great.
Yeah. And I think that's, when we started imagining in our scenario, we imagined a character that is not great. It's pretty good, right? But then due to some external influences, he's like pushed into a circumstance where he has to become great. And I think that, good to great is far more inspirational than like meh to good, right? So that's kind of what we kind of imagine.
But greatness is an interesting thing that, and I have to, there's been a few people that have adopted that particular, Frederick and Alexander, right? I mean, the people that follow that go, holy shit, I want a piece of Alexander's, empire, so to speak, right? Because he's the great, and he almost achieved, quite possibly, godlike status, right, with the Hellenization of the world, at least the Western world, anyways. Well, Western and Eastern as well, I guess. influenced. But the idea is that is it a perversion to think that everybody can be great? Not to say it's one on someone's ability, but there's got to be like the right balance of precursors. There has to be the right balance of environmental stimuli. There has to be a whole host of recipes that contribute to something that is quite honestly outside of somebody's, willful ability to be truly historically great, right? So that maybe I'm trying to draw a distinction between historically great, or just like lifetime greatness, like really, really revered by, by friends and family, right? Like what is greatness?
Well, and I think that's a really interesting point, because you talk about historically great, and where you're having an impact on many generations to come, right? Like Mary Shelley, great example, like historically great. Like there's not a kid today who doesn't know who Frankenstein is, although they probably have it wrong. It's the doctor, not the actual monster. But there's not. Question. Yeah, it's a trick question. There's not a kid today who doesn't know that name, right? And so like that is like, it just translates through generations, being historically great. But when we talk about individually great, we talk about finding, and we just actually had a conversation about this. It's your ikigai, like the Japanese philosophy of understanding what your real purpose is and living in your greatest potential point, right? And being able to literally be happy. And I think that's kind of the concept that we want to plug in here, is that this journey, our character goes on this journey, and he actually finds that connecting with people, is a way for him to reach his ikigai and where he unlocks his potential. And that, if people haven't found what they're passionate about, they kind of go through the motions. And I think this is actually, it happens today. There's so many people who are not really plugged into their potential, and they kind of they work because they gotta, and they get maybe 60 to tops 70% of the productivity that they could actually be giving. So companies miss out, people miss out, everybody's kind of just putting in the motions, versus finding what they're meant to do and living it, right? And this was a journey for Adam and I. Like when we started ENTA, it was this whole epiphany of like, we get to do this, right? Could you imagine having a company where everybody's plugged in like that? And I think this is the concept of where our character goes on this big epiphany, this journey, and then realizes that there's all this potential that they're not even tapping into, right? And he starts to unlock it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I would say that the one of the indicators of you guys really taking action or embodying that feeling is this exact episode and this series. In fact, is that as consultants, that's not the limit to what you guys are. You're business partners, and I can see you're very close friends, but you're creating something creative together, and that's wonderful, right? And so you're because you didn't have to go down that path to create a consultancy, right? You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to merge that into your personal narrative. As many people don't. They delineate it and they separate it and they compartmentalize it, and quite often it actually gets pushed off to, well, I'll do that someday, right? I'll write a book someday.
I'll write a book someday.
Yeah, why not today, right?
I don't know if we ever told you what actually pushed us to do this. Did we ever tell you that?
No.
We did an exercise with Insight Performance with the owner there, Stan Peake. He's an amazing business coach. And he said, do a eulogy exercise. Okay? And so we had to do a eulogy exercise about if we were to write our own eulogies today, and if we were going to write them like 20, 50, 40 years in the future, right? Your future eulogy. And so we each wrote 2 eulogies for ourselves, one today and one in the future. And then we read each other's eulogies. Yeah, actually, we can put a link to the episode where we did that. We actually filmed it. But in Adam's future eulogy, he had written a significant amount of books. like a significant amount of books. I think there was like 50. Was it?
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the engineer in me said to him after the episode, I said, I just want to like reverse engineer this. So we're going to have this to start this year. And he's like, oh yeah, I really didn't do the math on that one. But I said, I promise you, we will start this year. And that was it. We found you and here we are.
Well, I love the point of making the point, to engineers and anybody out there that there is an infinite difference between a 0 and a 1, and so it's
right.
And it seems so easy, especially if we're confronting infinity not in some abstract form. We're like, actually, I just have to start with hello world. I mean.
Well, and I think when you're tackling a project this big, right, it kind of like you just got to start. I can kind of plan it and think about it for years without like feeling like you've got the perfect plan and then executing it. And starting with an incomplete vision like that or whatever is scary, right? So it was super awesome that we started, and then the universe abides, right? Like 3 weeks later, we meet you, Dan, and you're like, "Hey, you want to like do a podcast on this?" We're like, "Yeah,
yes,
yeah, we do.
Yes, we need help. Absolutely. We're smart enough to know when we're not smart enough."
Yeah. So let's see what we can come up with here. So we've got like the kind of this intro, this idea of like waking up, right, and kind of the real sunrise versus the simulated one, and what would it be like if you'd never actually seen the sunrise, right? Kind of contrasting these ideas, and I'm kind of curious to see if we do what you suggest, Dan. We kind of draw some notes, and then you kind of help us move that forward. Like, where does this go?
Yeah, there must have statements. I must have this. It must be an artificial sunrise, right? Because I don't know, and you'll be surprised what's not in my head that's in your head, right? So think of that when you write the notes. Must have this. Must be artificial.
Right.
It is absolutely right. Absolutes and must-haves. It's 600 years in the future, right? Just what are those bullet points of this, and this, and then I'll abstract it together. And what will happen is that the role from a creative process is a little bit of a 3-way situation, but you have your... Kate.
It's not that kind of podcast.
I love it that it came from Kate and not from Adam or myself, right?
Straight face. Sure.
Okay, all right. I have to say, I used to have Playboys in my apartment. Okay, right? These kind of things, right? You know what? The dudes that used to come over never picked the bloody thing up, but the girls always looked at the thing. Always like, oh. It was just this weird sort of thing, right? Anyways, okay, we can move on from that.
You guys will never know what happens on girls' nights, but let me tell you, you wish you did.
Oh boy.
See, now that's also the cognitive fall off. Is I can multitask, but as soon as that kind of thinking comes into my head, it's like I'm at a starting point of 0 again, right? Like,
sorry, guys, we have to end the episode. Dan's done.
Yeah, I'm just like, that's it.
That's it.
Well, and I think this would actually, maybe we can work that in, right? We've got a character, right, that's going to be making some decisions, some good ones, some bad ones. But sometimes when you have an external influence such as this, people make poor decisions, and they do them quite happily and quite readily, right? So, maybe there's a place we can play there a little bit with,
Oh, absolutely. Sex sells. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
What does intimacy look like in this world 600 years from now, right?
We haven't had that conversation.
No.
But that should totally be an episode. Let's pull on a sex therapist.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
That would be interesting.
I mean, I think that's a great idea, right? I mean, Okay, so for what you guys were doing is scaffolding concepts, right? You're scaffolding certain things. And I think there should be an outreach of, we've got an architect possibly that might want to come on and talk about, some of the buildings of the future.
He might even sketch it out as we're talking.
Yeah, right? So we have that coming on. Then there's relationships. So there's a lot of people that we can ask. It's such a fun project. Like, how do you envision the future? We want an expert to come on and talk about, what they love to create and what they love to abstract.
Yes.
What would their lives and their profession be like in the future?
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's do it. If you want on, tell us your profession in the comments below and what you want to contribute. We'll have you on and you can help build this amazing story.
Do a voiceover if you want.
Yeah, we'll get you to do a voiceover. It's not as easy as it looks.
Okay, so we got some homework.
The free-form associative technique is a really interesting one. So we're gonna keep building on it. It's Adam's turn next, and I'll just let you know, it's not a technological, query or any kind of science thing. It's actually having you look back at some important science fiction writers from our past, right? So feel free to Google Oracle it and Wikipedia it, and
it really pushed me to think deeper about things. It was a great experience. I literally spent a few days contemplating the connection between the images and what it meant and what I could pull from that, and then how to relate them all and to tell a story and connect them all. And it really made me think outside of the box. I spent a good hour in the hot tub with my coffee in the morning, just how does this connect? What does this mean? Looking at the sunrise come up. It was actually very beautiful. So, it took days to put just that 2 minutes. It was 2 minutes together.
I love how you just switched that, because I had the tone of the voice was like there's this hardship and struggle, and then in the hot tub.
Yeah, right. Poor you. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places to be.
Difficult.
But I will say this, Dad. I mean, we're only on episode 3, and already, you're doing such a great job pushing us out of our comfort zone, right?
Thank you.
We're gonna show up here oh my God, what's Dan gonna make us do today?
Yeah,
awesome.
Well, it's the lob is back to me as well. So you should have something fairly straightforward. You're getting the concept of the freeform association, and send me those bullet points of must-haves and absolutes.
Okay.
And I'll start to. And remember, when we start to exchange this, it's allowing us to kind of step through the novel. It doesn't have to be rewritten at that point. It may even never follow that narrative thread.
Totally.
But what we're trying to do is put all that structure in place, and then we can go back and we can rewrite sections or introduce a new character or some dramatic, conflict or whatever, right? But let's bring it, let's keep progressing it this way.
Love it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
All right. I think that's perfect. That's bye for now, and top of the hour. So thanks, guys, and until next week, and everybody out there, keep thinking and stay creative.
Thank you.